You're watching Business Access TV.
Business Access.
Business Access.
Business Access.
Business Access.
You are watching Business Access TV.
Business Access TV.
Serious about business.
Serious about business.
Partners all in this great, most exciting, most rewarding, and today regarded as the #1 industry in the world, tourism. It is such a joy to have you here, and that joy is being really fulfilled by the fact that we've had an exciting journey spanning just a little over 13 months, when the germination of this idea was first, to begin with, thought through in London, and started a conversation about how do we deal with global disruptions, their impact on vulnerable states that are tourism dependent in particular. And in general, is there a response? Is there a means by which information, communication, knowledge can be disseminated and dispersed on a timely, indeed in real time, in nano time? Because that's the difference between life and death when these disruptions come. And so I wanted to embrace them in this inaugural event because it is out of that small step that has become what we hope to be this giant repository of knowledge, information, best practices, and huge opportunities for vulnerable states to be able to track, to identify, to manage, to recover, but most importantly, to thrive after recovery from mega global disruptions. And so I wanted also to embrace another gentleman who is in the audience and who was the Secretary General then of the United Nations World Tourism Organization, Dr. Talib Rifai, under whose leadership the celebrations and observations of the International Year of Sustainable Tourism for Development was observed. And then Jamaica was given the honor of hosting the first ever global conference on job creation and inclusive growth, a public-private partnership. And out of those 2 days of deliberations came a document which is now known globally as the Montego Bay Declaration, a 14-point document which sought to create something of a blueprint for sustainability and for the discussions that should flow from it. But it called for 3 particular deliverables. One was for the acceptance of governments across the world of the importance of small and medium tourism enterprises as a critical tool for inclusive growth and for sustainable development, particularly at the community level. And secondly, for the establishment of a global Tourism Resilience and Crisis Management Center. And thirdly, to encourage governments of the world, particularly those within tourism-dependent regions, to embrace the principle of multi-destination tourism as a critical tool to drive greater efficiencies and to create economy of scale so as to enable greater level of connectivity, particularly air connectivity, between markets and destination. Today we launch the first ever Global Tourism Resilience and Crisis Management Center. The third is a work in progress. And only this afternoon, in pursuance of that multi-destination arrangement, particularly for the countries of the Northern Caribbean, Jamaica, the Dominican Republic, Cuba, have already signed MOUs in this regard. And we had a discussion with the ambassador from Mexico earlier today about the first meeting that we propose to have in Cancun later on in this quarter. So, Mr. Cabal, I wish to report to the UNWTO, mission almost accomplished. But certainly, we are well on our way. The importance of a resilience and crisis management center cannot be overemphasized in a hyper-connected society and one in which travel and tourism has grown and expanded and has become such a global arrangement that it now exceeds in size the petroleum industry, the distributive trade, and plays only second role to financial services in terms of its contribution to global GDP. At 10.4% of global GDP, tourism stands out, providing in addition 1 in 10 jobs. And last year, 1.4 billion people traveled across the world for touristic purposes and spent a total of 7.8, rounded off 8 trillion US dollars. This is a huge industry. And we here in the Caribbean had 30 million visitors last year and earned some 32 billion US dollars. 1 in 5 jobs in the Caribbean directly related to tourism. And more than 40% of the GDP of the Caribbean is directly related to tourism. Indeed, in our own space, we are regarded as the world's most tourism-dependent region, with 13 of the top 20 countries of the world with the highest tourism dependence in relation to GDP. We are number 2 only to the Maldives, because Antigua and Barbuda is number 2. Jamaica is number 13. But the importance of this is that it brings with it a level of vulnerability. And that vulnerability has to be treated with by building a capacity to respond and to deal with it, building resilience. So whilst we speak of the importance of sustainability, maintaining the status quo, so to speak, and keeping the environment and the other critical areas intact, we have to go one step further to add value. To be able to survive is to be sustainable. To thrive is to be resilient. And so this center will focus very heavily on those critical elements that will make us thrive across the destinations of the world.
Every great nation in the world has to have two qualities to become great. They have to have pride in themselves, believe in what they are, and cultivate that pride. But they also have to have kindness, humility, and modesty combined with that. In Jamaica, Prime Minister, you always had by nature this modesty, humility, and kindness in receiving everybody. That's why you were a great tourism destination. But I believe truly, having known you, having seen this country for some years now, that you have installed the first part so amicably. The pride that Jamaicans have in themselves today is quite unique. You have a lot to do with it. You may not know this, but your name, your brand, your reputation around the world has become so amicable, has become so bright. Thanks to you, Prime Minister. Thank you for your good work. Every nation under the sun has developed new sources of energy, some solar energy, some water-driven energy. There's a special energy here in Jamaica, and it's called Edmund Bartlett. Imagine if the tourism industry was destroyed here in the Caribbean. Livelihoods of people would be destroyed, not just in the Caribbean, all over the world. We've seen incidents like this happening all over the world. That's why we care about this industry, and that's why this center is important. It's building the resilience of the nation, not building a resilience of a particular industry, as important as it may be. It all started in September of 2017 in China, in our General Assembly. If you remember Minister Bartlett, he came to whisper in my ears, what about establishing a center like this? You had just come out of one of those yearly disasters that you have so courageously accustomed to live with here. We were thinking of a Caribbean setup at the time. Then it moved to Spain, Malta, Amman, Berlin. And we have concluded it in December of 2017, here in Montego Bay, in this very same place, in announcing the creation of this center, that we want to do it. In less than 5 months, 6 months, we're doing it, my dear. 1 year of full work. Minister Bartlett, you deserve all the congratulations in the world. He asked me to become his co-chair. But I must say, there's a legitimate father to this project, and there is a stepfather. And I'm only a stepfather here. I do my best. But you are the creator of this center, and it will always bear your legacy. Thank you so much for being with us. Thank you for doing the good work that you're doing, Minister Bartlett. The center started with what its name is called. It's called Global Tourism Resilience and Crisis Management Center. Let's start with the last part, the crisis management, because that's what Edmund Bartlett came to talk to me in September of 2017 about. He said, it's crisis management. Then we discussed it a little bit, and we concluded that we can't just call it crisis management. It's too negative. We have to build on a positive part. So we added the term resilience. We believed in resilience is a more important element than crisis management per se. It's not the crisis. Crisis is something that is going to happen and will happen with every nation under the sun. So the name resilience was added to crisis management. Then, very shortly after this, we started to talk about the idea, every nation under the sun came and said, we want to have something like that. So it became global. That's how the name Global Tourism Resilience Crisis Management Center came about. When it became global, we decided that this is going to be the Caribbean gift, the Jamaican gift to the world. And we decided to expand the scope of this crisis from being just about natural disasters, which the Caribbean is very well known to have experience, into 5 basic elements of crisis and resilience. One, of course, is natural disasters. Japan, the Caribbeans are very good examples of that. Earthquakes that happened all over the world in the last 2 years are example of that. In Haiti, I know the good minister of Haiti is with us. You know how it devastated your entire lives, not just your industry. But the second most important crisis is health pandemics. What happened with our brothers and sisters in Africa as a result of Ebola, what happened in Asia as a result of SARS, has to be remembered. Resilience is about all kinds of crises. And the third is terrorism. It's a very, very important element that we have to keep in mind. We've seen countries like Egypt, like Turkey, like Tunisia, like France, suffering so much from one stupid, crazy, sick act of a person that slept at night and dreamt the next morning of becoming a hero, going to heaven in flying colors. These are elements that we have to be prepared for. The fourth element is economic downturn. We've seen what happened to Greece. We've seen what happened to Cyprus as a result of economic downturns, and every nation is likely to go and is viable to experience something like this. The fifth element is political downturn. Many countries around the world are experiencing something like this. So it's the 5 elements: natural disasters, health pandemics, terrorism, economic downturn, and political downturn. And the center will cater for all of these 5 elements. Because, my friend, anything can happen anywhere nowadays. No place under the sun can claim to be immune at all. I challenge you if you say any place can be. The functions of the center will be centered around 3 major activities. One is data collection and analysis. Historical records must be kept somewhere. We can't keep repeating the same mistakes again and again because we don't remember what happened last year. Numbers, data, research, everything has to be recorded in this center. This center will be the reference place for anything that happened in the last few decades about anything that has to do with disasters that have paralyzed our normal life. That's the first function of this center, which is data collection, research, and historical records. 2, the center will start training people how to face these crises when they happen, because they are going to happen. I tell you, if not here, somewhere else, if not one form or another form. Societies and all stakeholders have to be prepared for this. The third element is communication. It is crucial to know how to communicate after a crisis happens, because when a crisis happens, and it will happen, as I say, the time to recovery can be greatly reduced if we know how to deal with it. There are booklets and guidelines that have been developed in WTO over the years that tell you how you can better deal with the media. We don't know sometimes how to deal with the media. These are the 3 functions of the center. 1 is data collection, 2 is training, and 3 is communication skills.
The center is going to be housed in accommodation at the regional headquarters of the University of the West Indies, and that is why I'm here. I'm here representing the Vice Chancellor, Professor Sir Hilary Beckles. Unfortunately, I had to travel. Didn't expect to travel at the time he accepted this invitation. So I'm bringing greetings to you on his behalf and on behalf of the staff and 50,000 students of the University of the West Indies. We have identified accommodation, and I have the keys to that accommodation with me, and which I will hand over to the minister after these formalities. Now, you're probably wondering, why is it being located at the University of the West Indies? Is it just because Minister Edmund Bartlett is a graduate of the university? No, it's not. It's because of what the university has to offer. First of all, university is a global institution based in the Caribbean region. We have 3 campuses and 20 sub-campuses throughout the Caribbean. But we also serve the Caribbean people in its global diaspora, and they're everywhere in the world. So mission is global. But our mission is global too because since we started 7 years ago, we have always had an international staff, international student body, and thirdly, as a small country, we have to influence global affairs if we're going to develop and to progress. Indeed, this university has contributed to global debates. In fact, the university has produced 3 Nobel Prize winners, 1 in economics, 1 in literature, and 1 in climate change. Now I want to assure all of you who don't know about the University of the West Indies that in housing the center at the University of the West Indies, you have linked with an internationally acclaimed university. The university is ranked by the Times Higher Education Ranking System as not only #1 in the Caribbean, but of the 24,000 universities in the world, the University of the West Indies is ranked in the top 5%. The university brings to the center a track record of expertise in all the critical areas which the center will be dealing with. We have long had a research center on tourism policy, and we have produced a considerable amount of policy research in that area. We are a major training institution for the security officials of this region. We offer a master's degree in security studies, which includes Minister of Cybersecurity. We have a long track record of disaster management because in this region we have been very prone to natural disasters. The university has been in the forefront of responding to that, not only crisis management, but in resilience. We also have a world-renowned medical faculty, pandemics and health. Well, we were instrumental in intervening in a number of those when they appeared in the region. Indeed, the medical faculty was the first faculty founded by the university. And lastly, we are among the leaders in climate change studies, sustainable development. All members of staff are part of the global network of officials which are drafting and implementing the Sustainable Development Goals at the multilateral level through the United Nations. So it is with great pleasure on behalf of Sir Hilary Meckles, the staff and students of the University of the West Indies, that we proudly accept and look forward to continuing to work for the Global Tourism Resilience and Crisis Management Center. Thank you very much.
On behalf of the Secretary General and the whole staff of the United Nations World Tourist Organization, I would like to thank you, Minister, and all of your team for the excellent cooperation and leadership to make this magnificent initiative real and tangible. The growing international awareness of the fast pace of climate change and biodiversity loss taking place in our planet, together with the impacts that such change are having on the natural environment, on humans and their livelihoods, have become evident. For tourists, climate change and biodiversity loss is not an abstract concept, but a phenomenon that already affects the sector and certain places, in particular mountain regions and coastal destinations. In a small island state and developing countries where tourism is a major economic activity, any significant reduction in tourist arrivals will have serious employment impacts and a decline in economic and social prosperity. Nevertheless, the Global Tourist Resilience and Crisis Management Center is indeed a formidable breakthrough in the tourist representing hope for the Caribbean, often hit by natural disasters. After today's milestone, we can definitely say that tourism is a step further from vulnerability. Once again, dear Minister, thank you and congratulations for this splendid initiative. Thank you very much.
The need for such a center is something that had been so obvious that it had been overlooked until somebody took the decision and made it happen. I am from Belize. Belize is in the Caribbean, Belize is Central American. Belize suffers from all of those disasters like all the rest of the Caribbean and Central America. And knowing that such a facility is being established in this region is something that I am very happy for myself and for the rest of the region. That the center is being opened just a short 14 months after the adoption of the Montego Bay Declaration is indeed a remarkable achievement and a testament to the arduous work and determination of the government of Jamaica and of Minister Bartlett. Travel and tourism, as everybody knows, contributes to more than 10% of world output and nearly 10% of employment worldwide. Over these last few days, I've also been learning some staggering figures about the importance of tourism. I always knew it was important, but the impact on the global economy is really, really eye-opening. The sector, nevertheless, remains vulnerable to threats, challenges, and disruptions of various sorts, perhaps overwhelmingly so to those related to climate change and natural disasters. The Organization of American States has long recognized with grave concern that the Latin American and Caribbean region represents one of the most vulnerable regions in the world due to the adverse impact of climate change. We also recognize that within this region, many small island developing and low-lying coastal states face severe threats to their survival and viability due to the effects of climate change and rising sea levels. For the OAS, the issue of resilience remains a critical one. The organization has played an integral role in supporting efforts to enhance resilience in the tourism sector in the Caribbean for many years. In the aftermath of the destructive 2017 hurricane season, and in the Caribbean, which saw destruction caused by Hurricane Maria in Dominica and Puerto Rico and Hurricane Irma on the island of Barbuda, the OAS at its headquarters in Washington, D.C., hosted a meeting with Caribbean leaders and with Sir Richard Branson, as well as several international institutions and private sector officials. This meeting sought to put together a broad-based, multi-sector coalition to mobilize private sector funding for climate change resilience initiatives in the region as the foundation for urgent action. Similarly, in November 2017, the OAS, in partnership with the George Washington University, organized a roundtable discussion on Caribbean tourism business recovery, solutions for a resilient future. The discussion aimed at identifying short and medium-term strategies to help the recovery of the tourism industry in those Caribbean countries most affected, and sought commitments from partners who can contribute to an initial assessment of the status of the accommodation sector and rebuilding of the tourism industry. The OAS has also collaborated with the Caribbean Disaster Emergency Management Agency to produce the Multi-Hazard Contingency Planning Manual for the Caribbean tourism sector. The manual, which was originally prepared in 2008, remains an innovative disaster planning instrument, both in its design and in its content. Funded by the U.S. Department of State, it was prepared to assist the tourism sector in preparing for, responding to, and recovering from those natural or man-made catastrophic events that could severely impact the Caribbean's tourism sector's physical infrastructure, employees and customers, and business resiliency. We at the Organization of American States are already exploring opportunities for synergies between our own resilience project in the Caribbean and this center, and we look forward to supporting efforts to attract resources and identify the partnerships necessary to allow the center to effectively discharge its mandate. You can count with the continued commitment of the Organization of American States. Thank you very much.
Over the last several years, governments and societies have become increasingly aware of the need to mainstream resilience strategies in their everyday operations. Faced with a wide range of dynamic threats, the global economy has become far more volatile and increasingly uncertain. Consequently, policymakers across all economic sectors globally are facing unprecedented demands to ensure that strategies promoting resilience, mitigation, and adaptation are central to their agendas for achieving sustainable development. Of all major industries globally, arguably none faces greater exposure to disruptive forces than the hyper-connected tourism sector. The irony of the tourism industry, however, is that the tourism sector has also displayed this uncanny ability to recover quickly. So there is just something about tourism that is resilient. So it is the most exposed, but it has also demonstrated the greatest ability to recover. The most recent data provided by the UNWTO found that in 2018, the sector, that is the tourism sector, grew by 4.6%, and that was much faster than the global economy. For Jamaica, over the last 10 years, our data shows that our tourism industry grew by 36%. That's amazing. While the rest of the economy over the last 10 years, the overall economy, grew by 6%. So tourism is the standout performer. In the last decade, Jamaica suffered terribly in the last global recession. Luckily, our financial sector did not suffer as badly as others, but the rest of our economy plummeted in 2009. In fact, the latest data is showing that we're just now recovering ground. Our economy has actually grown back to what it was in 2009 at the start of the recession. But tourism has just grown leaps and bounds since, and that reinforces the point. There can be all kinds of exogenous shocks to the economy, and many industries will take far longer to recover, but tourism has managed to recover very, very quickly. And so for policymakers, it is important that we study this, phenomenon, we understand it, and we properly document it and assimilate it and mainstream it into our practice to ensure that whatever kind of disaster that may affect us, we can actually recover. So I'm very interested in the work that is going to be done by the Resilience Center, not just for tourism, but more importantly, what lessons could other industries learn about the speed of recovery after disaster and building in redundancies and protocols to ensure that we have resilience and sustainability. Very, very important institution, and I'm very happy that we initiated and we have actually now executed, having the center being launched here today. At the heart of destination management is the notion of security. And in recent times, the issue of security has taken center stage. It's a delicate issue to manage. You can't say too much, but at the same time, you need to reassure the public about the safety of the destination. And the safety of the destination comes down to many threats: local crime, global terrorism, threat of war, pandemics, but one that is emerging in a serious way, which we have to pay attention to, in which many Caribbean countries may not be totally prepared, is that of cybersecurity. The cyberspace and the cyber frontier is one that we have to pay very close attention to, because the truth is that global travel is so much dependent on this whole business of the exchange of information. So the data of the traveling person is vitally important. And if that data is not protected or gets into the wrong hands or is stolen or used in nefarious ways, then you could virtually cripple the industry. Because it is not seen so much as a physical threat, sometimes governments underestimate. And certainly in the region, far more work needs to be done on the issue of the cyber security. And I'm pleased to report here that the government of Jamaica is taking this very seriously. We're taking the security of the country very seriously. We have developed Plan Secure Jamaica. And in this very city, you would have seen the impact of the decisions that the government has made in ensuring the security of our citizens and our visitors alike. There is no question that the entire tourism industry here in this city feels much safer than before. And the commendations that we have received and the encouragement that we have received is that we must find ways to continue improving the security, because this will improve the product. The other major threat which Jamaica pays close attention to is pandemics. And more, we're seeing how pandemics can have a significant effect on travel. Thankfully, the region has been spared major pandemics, but we're not taking it for granted. We are spending significant resources in ensuring that we are able to respond to pandemics, but more importantly, to prevent diseases and health threats from morphing into pandemics. Because the challenge with the pandemics, Minister, is not that people will get sick and therefore won't be able to function. The real challenge is people will just hear there is something in this region It doesn't even have to be in this country. There is something in this region, and the region is avoided. So Jamaica's strategy is not just to ensure that Jamaica is safe, but to collaborate with all our countries through the PAHO and WHO to ensure that we play our part in strengthening the global network for a healthy region and a healthy world. So what's left for me to do is to, again, congratulate the Minister of Tourism and our friend Talib Rafai for envisioning this new institution. Again, to congratulate the University of the West Indies for accepting to host the institution. We are looking forward to the work that will be done, and we want to work closely with the University of the West Indies because we believe it would be beneficial for us to understand how the rest of government can benefit from the lessons that you will learn, the lessons you will inevitably teach us in ensuring that we are resilient and that we can manage crisis.
The launch was very timely, and the establishment of the center is something which is long overdue. Many of the tourist destinations in the world are in environmentally vulnerable areas prone to natural disasters, and the hurricanes of the last couple of years in the Caribbean has emphasized the necessity for such a function that the center will undertake, not only to respond to crisis, but to be proactive in preventing crises which arise from terrorism and pandemics and other non-environmental threats. Well, the university will play a central role. First of all, we are housing the institution at the regional headquarters of the University of the West Indies. Secondly, it will draw on many of the strong aspects of the university's research and policy advice, such as health, security, climate change, sustainable development, economics, tourism, all of those. It's a partnership in which many countries, many organizations, many individuals are involved. Minister Edmund Bartlett was the person who initiated the idea, and the University of the West Indies, being a globally ranked university, was a natural place to put the center.
I'm Dr. Lloyd Waller. I'm the Senior Advisor to the Minister of Tourism and the Project Manager for this center, and one of the managers for the launch itself. The overall, my responsibility has been to identify the partners, deal with all the technical aspects of the project, all the policy aspects of the project, all the international relations and international negotiations, meeting with the different stakeholders, ensuring that all the stakeholders are aware and are on board with all of the activities that we're doing. And also, as the person who actually works at the University of the West Indies, I've also been the person who has been the liaison between the University of the West Indies and the Ministry of Tourism as it relates to the establishment of the centre at the University of the West Indies. To be quite frank, this is something I used to do when I worked with the United Nations, so it hasn't been a challenge for me. I've been using the templates and the models that I've been using when I was at UN, so it has not been a problem in that particular instance. Everybody is happy, everybody is very interested in participating in this particular initiative, largely as a result of the thematic areas, one of which is digital transformation, climate resilience, climate management, cybercrime, cybersecurity, entrepreneurial development, epidemic and pandemic. So these are areas that are of critical importance to the development, product and tourism specifically, and therefore it wasn't difficult to convince persons to actually come and partner with us. As a matter of fact, many of the partners actually reached out to us to say that we want to be a part of this, given the fact that that no center of this nature exists anywhere around the world, and there's a great demand for it.
Well, first of all, I think that the launch is, in fact, timeless, but the timeliness of it now is very, very appropriate because we have just come out of what is our difficult weather season. And thank goodness we didn't come out too badly. But the season before that, as you know, the Caribbean suffered tremendously. We've lost an entire island in the process, and about 228% of the GDP of another, and perhaps 60% of the GDP of yet another. And the recovery process has been slow and tedious. We've also had situations where, for example, Haiti had a mega earthquake, as you recall, from which they still have not even started to recover. So what it says is that the center could not have been launched too soon. I really feel very humbled that Jamaica is leading the global discourse in terms of providing support and more so institutional capacity building for countries that have suffered from mega disruptions. But I think the focus that we wanted to put on is more the vulnerable small island states that lack resources. When the big countries like the United States have attacks, they recover and recover fast. When small countries like Haiti and poor countries like Haiti have disruptions, they never recover. If indeed they do, it is at snail's pace. So we have to work as assiduously as we can to bring capacity, to create resilience among those countries that are highly vulnerable so that they can recover and recover quickly. And more importantly, as they keep saying, thrive, build better afterwards.
Today is a proud day for us in Jamaica as we